Welcome to this week's episode. What wine would help you feel like you could sort of enjoy, if you can, this situation we're all in, which is being quarantined? Well, I think I have a wine that's going to help you just escape and feel wonderful. Stay tuned. Welcome to this week's episode. So yes, I found this wine, and if you recall from a couple weeks ago, I focused on The Prisoner, right? That great Zinfandel blend from Dave Finney and Orin Swift Cellars. Well, guess what? When he sold that label, he had to wait 8 years before he could do another Zinfandel blend. And guess what? He came up with one, and it's called 8 Years in the Desert. And I've tasted it, and I'm going to tell you all about it. So let's take a look at this wine and see if this will help you escape the idea of being under quarantine. Well, I've been looking for this wine for a little while now because I knew Dave Finney came up with a new wine, and because he had to wait a little while, he made The Prisoner and then he sold it, and then he had to wait about 8 years before he could make another Zinfandel blend. And finally, it was about 2 years ago, he came out with 8 Years in the Desert, right? And which turned out to be a chapter from one of his books he put together when he sold a collection of the wines from Orin Swift Cellars. And it sounds great. It's sort of that idea where I have to leave Zinfandel for a while, and I'm going to come back to it when I'm ready, and I'm just going to attack it with the same verve that he did back in 1998. So imagine, 2018, it was 20 years after he first made his very first foray into Zinfandel. So 8 Years in the Desert, it's just this great bottle, and I've put the link in there for you so you can see all the Orin Swift Cellars labels. They're really cool labels, and he comes up with these just dynamic wines. So this wine has a lot of hype. It has great scores, 95 plus wherever you look, and it's about, say, $45 to $55 a bottle, which is about where his wines tend to be. And I thought, you know what? I bought the 8 Years in the Desert bottle. I was so excited to taste it. And I thought, I'm going to have it with some barbecue food because like we're under quarantine, but I can get my food delivered. So I had one of my local barbecue places deliver some spare ribs and some brisket and pulled pork. And I opened up the 8 Years in the Desert and I had it with it. But I also kept a bottle of The Prisoner to have with it. So I can do sort of a compare and contrast from what he started with and then where he is now. Well, I have to admit, I did like The Prisoner a little bit more. But let's talk about 8 Years in the Desert. Well, it's a blend. Of course, it has Zinfandel for sure. But he also blends it with some other grapes. And it is nice, but it is full-bodied. It does have some tannin, but it's not overly tannic. But what I noticed, it had some really warm, spicy notes. It's hard to exactly, but something like a very warm cinnamon and blackberry and boysenberry and some black cherry right in your face with some new leather and a little bit of tobacco, which I did like. I tell you what, I think if you are one of those people and you're like my brother-in-law who just loves wines from Australia, especially Syrah, and Zinfandels from Paso Robles or even Napa, like this one, I think you're going to just enjoy this wine. It's about 15 plus in the alcohol category. And it reminds me of an Australian Shiraz. It's or a Syrah that's maybe from Paso Robles or from Napa. It is full throttle, in your face, big robust wine, which was nice because it went really well with the barbecue. So I have to admit, there's nothing wrong with this wine. It's fabulous. It is, of course, $45 or more. But I want to just let you know that if the red wines that you tend to like are more restrained, like the ones my wife likes, she's much more Cab Franc, and she likes the light-bodied red wines. But if you're someone who likes those full-throttle Napa Cabs and heavy Zinfandels and Syrahs from Paso, heavy, deep, lots of alcohol, you're going to love this wine because it delivers on all categories. So yes, it is the darling of critics and it is wonderful. There's nothing wrong with it. My only take is, remember way back when I started explaining to you that a wine may not be bad. Just because you don't like it doesn't mean it's bad. And if it's bad doesn't mean you don't like it. You know, it's all about preference and what we like. So for my taste, it's just a little too over the top. I could sort of taste the fruit, but I found even with the barbecue, the wine was just over the top, but enjoyable. And I like a little bit more tannin, and I like a little bit more, even keel, if you would. This is sort of a heavy-bodied, heavy alcohol, and it's nice. There's nothing wrong with this wine. It just wasn't maybe for my taste, and it wasn't for my wife's taste, but a delicious wine, no matter what. 8 Years in the Desert, it's just sort of a great... there's something about it that here's Dave Finney, and he started way back with nothing, with some Zinfandel grapes, and he thought, I love the Zinfandel grape, I want to make a wine of it. He comes up with something like The Prisoner. It is just world famous, and he sells it, and then he has to wait a little while, and it's in his search for I want to go back to my roots. There's something special about that. I want to go back to my roots. What drove me to be so passionate about wine in the first place? And then he comes up with this one. So it is wonderful. Now, there's something I want to let you know about the Orin Swift Cellars. They have a great website. I've put it in the link in the description box. It's not that he only makes Zinfandel wines. He makes some cab-based, and he makes some Syrah-based, and Zinfandel-based, of course, like this one. And I've had about 3 of his other ones. Mercury Head, which is 100% Cabernet Sauvignon, and our friends loved it, and it was just sort of this great bottle. It's on the pricey side. It's definitely $55 and more, but what a cool bottle. All his bottles and all his labels are just really like works of art. And then he has some other ones, Palermo, and he has another one called Papillon, which my other brother-in-law really loved. So, and it's a blend of some Cab and some Merlot and some Petit Verdot. So those are more blends. But Mercury Head, which was a runaway hit at our friend's house, is 100% Cabernet Sauvignon. So Dave Finney, he likes experimenting. He likes to see what he has. So I think this will be great for the Syrah and the Australian Shiraz lovers in your life. And if you happen to like those, I think this will be a very nice one. So again, 8 Years in the Desert. He had a little while to find out what where his passions really began. And I think he did a wonderful job. It may not be my personal taste of the wines I always want to go to, but let me tell you, it was fine with the barbecue, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with this wine, and I encourage you to give it a try. Well, thank you so much for being such loyal subscribers, and I like exploring the world of wine with you together, and thank you for sharing with your friends and family and coworkers. I sure appreciate it. Just look how beautiful that wine is. So, 8 Years in the Desert, as we all survive the quarantine together, and may this pass from us very soon. I hope it does for you and for us. Cheers, everyone.